Every couple of months, we hear Bob Iger make wild claims like, oh, they're finally going to focus on quality over quantity, and soon everybody is going to want to see the MCU films in droves. But unfortunately for him, everything he has predicted so far has been wrong, and now he is attempting to blame the Marvel's abysmal quality on the lockdowns, citing the lack of executive oversight on set. I have a few different things that I want to show off, but before we get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, follow me on social media, and consider supporting through Patreon or via YouTube membership. Now, we all knew that The Marvels was going to fail just like every other Disney film this year, and we didn't exactly know which angle people like Bob Iger were going to take, but now we see it, and it is the most ridiculous of them all. So it says he may be selling it, but it's highly doubtful that anyone will buy it, according to the Disney CEO, rather than the studio's own talents and workflow, the actual culprits behind the impressively poor quality of the Marvels were on the lockdowns and a supposed lack of on-set oversight from executives. Now, this is the most ridiculous answer that he could have come up with and that he could have told us, because this is just not true at all whatsoever. Yes, the Marvels did begin filming almost 2 years ago, and that was when everything had finally lifted and people were able to do things again. But at the same time, it is not our fault, okay, that you just picked poor people for the job, because like the top talents in the industry would have been able to work with delays. They would have been able to work with maybe certain actors not being available on certain days. That is why you pick talented people for jobs. But now he's claiming that, oh, it was a lack of oversight from executives on set. It's not our fault that you are picking poor executive producers for these films, and you just do not have people that are able to deal with, problems that may arise like this. This is what happens when you are picking people, again, who aren't really that talented or haven't worked on major productions before. It says the current executive head of the House of Mouse offered his take on the Marvel's latest disaster while speaking to attendees at the 2023 edition of the New York Times Dealbook Summit, and speaking to the topic of Disney's recent string of box office misses. Iger began, per a live tweet of the event provided by The Verge, admitting that not only does the company need to get more realistic about their internal performance expectations, but also that it was a definite mistake to approach the streaming era with a flood-the-market-esque production philosophy. Wow, exactly what we've all been saying for years at this point. Yes, they do need to get more realistic, but the problem with Bob Iger is that he is just damage controlling at this point, because he has said things like this all many, many times, right? Like, he has recently, recommitted that Disney will focus on quality over quantity going forward. We've heard that like 4 times over the past year and a half. They have constantly touted this. Oh, maybe this approach to the streaming era with the flood the market-esque production philosophy was a mistake. You've also said this before. Like, he has said this all of these things, to be exact, many, many times. And of course, I don't think any of us expected Bob Iger to come out and straight up admit that people are not doing their jobs properly at the company. But a major issue with something like The Marvels, She-Hulk, Miss Marvel, is the fact that not only are they focusing on a female-centric future for things like the MCU, which female fans of the MCU previously, like me, would go and just see good movies. It does not matter if it is female-centric or not, but the fact that they are so focused on the message being part of all these projects. I just recently talked about how Disney basically manipulated Stan Lee's legacy in order to double down on inclusivity going forward. That video will be linked down below, but that is all that they are focused on. And when you are simply focused on the message and you are not focused on the consumer and what the consumer wants, you're going to lose out on money. You are going to push consumers away, and that is what they have been doing with, again, all of these female-centric products and focusing on things like inclusion and diversity instead of genuinely good storytelling. And even though he claims they're going to focus on quality over quantity, there is another quote that is going around where he's specifically targeting storytelling and saying that creators at Disney have lost sight of what their jobs should be. Entertain first, not messages. But that's not what Disney's been doing. Maybe this is a desperate attempt to quell investors in the wake of Disney's financial failures and all of the losses, but he clearly knows what the problem is. These are all hollow promises that he's making, and I don't think the company is going to drastically change. This, of course, is what needs to happen, but it doesn't mean it's anything more than, again, just a hollow promise. From there, he turned to directly address the Marvel's box office implosion. However, rather than blame the film's flopping on, maybe even the recent guild strikes or the lack of marketing or, as it says, the allegedly sexist attitudes of fans, Iger instead claimed that its poor performance was yet another casualty of Disney's eye for content being bigger than their stomachs. It was shot during the lockdowns, he argued, and there wasn't enough supervision on set. This is such a giant cope, okay? If he had come out during this and said, this movie simply failed because we didn't have the right people for the job, or, it just wasn't what we wanted at the end of the day, if he actually tried to admit the fact that they are not making content that fans want to see, he would have just gotten praised for his statement by so many people, but that is not what he did. Instead, he decided to blame it on an issue from years ago. This is such a big cope because theaters reopened after the lockdown in April 2021. Okay, it has been years at this point since things started shifting back to normal. He says that, this is why the Marvels failed, but this year we got Super Mario Brothers movie that made $1 billion, the Barbie movie that made $1 billion, Oppenheimer has made right under $1 billion. You also had at the very end of last year, Avatar: The Way of Water, which made $2.3 billion, so it's at least an honorable mention, but the reason why he's coming out and saying this now is because it is the first time since 2014, not including the lockdown years of 2020 and 2021, that Disney hasn't had $1 billion release. The studio had 7 films that hit $1 billion in 2019 alone. Yeah, they had a few movies that did okay this year, like Guardians of the Galaxy at $845 million worldwide, but movies like The Little Mermaid live action failed to meet expectations. Elemental was a flop. Dial of Destiny was such a disaster, they're shelving Indiana Jones, which, in my opinion, is a good thing so they don't have to do a prequel and recast Harrison Ford or attempt to continue the legacy with a character like Phoebe Waller-Bridges, who will never live up to Indy. And to top that all off, they recently had Wish release, which had their lowest animated scores in over a decade, and it failed to, really cast any waves over the Thanksgiving weekend. I mean, they had an extra long weekend, and it managed to take 3rd place, not 2nd, not 1st, and they just are unable, at least this year, to really capture what audiences want to pay to see. It all comes down to the customers. If you are giving us good products, we will support them, and if you're not, we're going to abandon you. We're going to leave you in the dust, and that is what is happening. People are going and seeing movies, just not Disney's movies, and it's because they're not giving people good products, and if they were, we would go and support them. It says, though, this is not the first time responsibility for Marvel's current quality spiral has been blamed on the executive teams at both Marvel Studios and Disney, anonymously relaying their experiences to Variety's Tatiana Siegel for her recent Crisis at Marvel expose. A number of Marvel insiders lamented that while the studio's visual effects quality has in fact gone off of a cliff over the past few releases, with many pointing to She-Hulk as a particularly egregious example of this decline, these issues were sadly a symptom of a deeper rot, namely a lack of oversight on script development. We do not know, right, if Disney is ever going to get back to the point where they were at, where they'd have 7 movies in one single year hitting $1 billion, but they are not going to come even close to that again if they do not start listening to what fans want. They need to stop making shows like Miss Marvels, the She-Hulks. Nobody wants to see the Marvels. And they need to actually hone in on what made the MCU and just Disney in general very special. I mean, even all of these live action remakes / adaptations that they're doing, like Snow White, The Little Mermaid. I grew up loving the Disney princess films, but the past few live action adaptations like Peter Pan and Wendy, Mulan, Little Mermaid, next we're gonna get Snow White, these are not good adaptations that I would want to go and see, and I paid to see the first few, like Cinderella, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin. Those were really good. But there is no way they're going to win consumers back if they continue down this terrible path and continue to lie straight to our faces by claiming that a movie releasing in 2023 effectively failed because of the lockdowns years ago is ridiculous. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this and of course found it important and informative, make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you didn't, make sure to give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.